This problem has one little baby, tiny, teeny tiny first step. What does it say to do? If the first term is negative, then?
Factor out.
Okay, you're ultimately, if this helps, like the beginning of homework, if there's a negative in front, we always say that there's a GCF of -1. We don't like this first term being negative. It actually messes up quite a few things, or at least makes quite a few things harder as you keep on going in math. So if we can ignore it, now, hold on. In math, you can never just say, like, I don't like you, I'm just going to ignore you. It doesn't work like that. But what we can do is legally pull it out. If you remember when you factor something out, like a GCS that we took out a few days ago, I think it was the end of last week, how do you legally undistribute something? Distributing is multiplying, so how do we take it the other way? Dividing. So we'd have to divide everything by a -1. Do you guys remember what happens when you multiply by a -1 or divide by a -1? Dividing by 1 doesn't change the number at all. But dividing by a -1 changes what? The sign. So if I do a negative over a negative, I'm going to end up with a positive 2y squared. A negative over a negative is a positive 5y. And a negative over a negative is a
positive.
Now, if the signs were different, they wouldn't have all ended up being positive. But since they were all negative and I took that away, I factored it out, well, then they all became positive. Now, what were the directions, though? What's the word?
Factor.
Factor. So if I'm supposed to factor, this is a good first step. What does it say next? After you pull out the negative?
Keep factor.
Okay, because I have a trinomial, right? So I look on the inside, and I say, how do I break you down? All right, guys, from what we did yesterday, right? From what we did yesterday, how do I fill in my box? Not 3. 3 times 2. Remember? I need to do this guy times that guy, right? So 3 times 2 is 6. And then what goes in the bottom?
5.
The middle term. So who do we take off to the side and think about, hey, 1 goes into you, 2 goes into you, 3. If you guys keep going, 4, 5, 6, do you realize how they just kind of repeat in a different order?
Yeah.
Do we need to actually write them twice, or is once enough?
Once.
Yeah, once is enough. Okay. Which one looks better for, wait.
2.
Careful. If I have a plus, what does that mean? Same or opposite from yesterday? Same. And what same sign is it going to have? Sweet. So do I want 1 plus 6 or 2 plus 3?
2.
Got him, coach. So let's get it in. We have our 2 and we have our 3. And how do we send that information to the box to finish the problem? What always goes here?
2y squared.
The first term. Oh, Everest is rocking it. Where are the rest of you?
Yeah,
Okay,
Everest.
that's good. I want to hear more. Good job.
Bravo.
The 2y squared. Okay, now Everest, I want you to think it and let them work for it. So I have the 2y squared. Booyah. What always goes here? 3, which is the last term, right? Okay, check it. First term goes upper left. Last term goes bottom right. Yeah? Now I need to fill in. Wait, I'm missing 2 things. Wait, what did you just find?
2 and 3.
Yeah. But careful, Jerry. When we put in the 2 and put in the 3, what do we have to put with the 2 and with the 3? Yeah, the y's. Okay. Our box is good. Help me out. What am I supposed to be asking myself next to pull out my factors from my box? Remember, we're working backwards. What's in common? Good, Dan. What's in common, right? Okay, so what's in common as I go? Is it okay? Do you guys have a method? Do you go across first? Do you go up?
I always do the first box, so I fill that in.
Like that way, kind of?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you guys come up, what's in common?
2y.
2 and y. And then, what's in common?
Y.
Yeah. 2 times 1 and 3 times 1. I mean, there's a 1 in common. Oh, okay, there's a 1y in common. Not the 2, not the 3. Just a 1. And then, what's in common here?
1.
Yeah, do you see it? 1 times 2 and 1 times 3. There's no shared number besides 1. Oh, but how about here?
3.
So where does the box lead me? To a final answer. And here's the one thing you have to remember. When you go to write your factors, which we're going to steal from right outside, which we just pulled out of our box, what do we have to remember is chilling just waiting to be written again. The negative 1. Anytime you pull out a GCF, remember, the box has factored this inside piece. The outside piece still needs to be there. Okay, but what do you see? What's on the outside of the box? What are those factors?
Parentheses.
Parentheses, 2y
Plus 3.
plus 3, because it's a positive 3. And then? You're facing it. Let's go grade that homework. Grab out whatever you were able to get done last night, 3 through 12 and or 13 through 24. Those are the 2 that are due. Grade what you can. But can I show you the book real fast? If I can find it. Oh, where's the book? Here he is. What was going on in numbers 3 through 8? Remember, I think the homework cutoff was like here, right? Something like that? And this was homework number 28. And this is homework number, 24 down there. Number 29. Check it. What are you guys pulling out of each of these? Did anybody realize what each of these had?
A B.
A common factor. Yeah, each of them had a common number you could have pulled out first. And so this one, you could have pulled out like I'm just showing you the odds because the odds you've already graded in the back of the book. Andrew Casper. So you could pull out a GCF and say, oh, it's just a 1x squared plus 1x minus 2. So it's one of those easier factoring ones from section 7.5. But you would have needed to have kept going. I'm going to put a dot, 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 because you're not done. But each of these, all of them, 3 through 8, all the way down to this guy, you should have pulled out a GCF first. And then you would have taken, just like you saw us do, this trinomial and break them down into those factors. But on these ones, 9 through 12, is there a GCF? 3 doesn't go into 11, right? So I'm not pulling out a GCF. Instead, I'm going straight to the x, and when I do the x, since I have a number in front and at the end, remember, I'm looking at 18. Up here, I was just looking at -2 because, well, the first guy was a 1, so nothing changed. But down here, once I was stuck with this guy and he couldn't come out, I had to multiply to get it into my x, just like you guys were doing. And that actually got us through the end of homework 28, the beginning of homework 29. And then what was changing down here at the end of homework? The negatives. So what's the very first thing you would have wanted to do? Pull out the negative 1. And then you would have had 3t squared minus 11t plus 6. What would you have put into your x? Can I pull the 3 out?
Yeah.
I almost can. 3 goes into 3 and 6, but this 3 goes
No.
into 11.
Oh, no.
So I have to go ahead and multiply a times c, and I'd be looking at my 18. I'm going to do dot, dot, dot. I was just trying to show you kind of the different pieces of homework. And then 23 and 24 were just, I don't know, finding the mistake. So here we go. Here is, I think, the second half of homework. And here is the first half of homework. Ready, set, great. How did your factors go?
Wait, are we on?
Huh?
Are we on 7?
Today we're going. I just haven't written it yet. So. Yeah,
I thought
only when there's a negative in the left, not an end of homework. Those are the only ones?
There is.
Yeah, there's not an
There is. Ever press? Yeah.
Make sure you write down.
I didn't look.
Oh, here you go.
Is that
Write down
energy?
the
I
other
made you
assignment.
look.
Yeah,
Yeah, 2-4. 2-4. Who? Oh.
Here, you can write down what those are.
I'll kill myself. You make fun of me? You're a JV already. What? How would you say that? What's wrong? Why would you say that?
What? Yeah.
Serious energy.
And back to what? Answer.
What? Oh, damn.
Have a
Damn, bro. He's coming back.
Yeah.
I do not
Wow.
say that. I do not.
Dang, you know what you're saying.
I do not say that.
What are you gonna say?
Because it's so, don't say that.
What are you gonna say? You said she got injured. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is so toxic.
Okay.
This toxic environment. Like this is toxic. How is toxic? How much? I'm a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to
Last row, I'm Clemencia. And I'm going to see if you guys have any questions on those two that we're trying to grade.
Oh, it's Friday? Oh, yeah, because I'm a day only. This is day. My son. This is day. A day only. This is day. You should always remember that. Always remember. I'm a day only. Wait, do you know what time you was?
Okay, hold on. I'm changing things up just a little bit today. Alright guys, open back up your notes. You were just there a second ago. Can you guys open them back up? Keep your homework because some of you might have questions that you want us to go over a few examples, and that's okay. Armando, put that back on my desk, please. Order, send to back. There we go. Alright guys, go ahead and take the first page of notes for today. Thank you for grading. I have a few people asking me questions, and so you guys are going to go ahead and start 7.7 notes. The homework for tonight is on the board. We're going to do a big old factoring worksheet to kind of practice everything, but instead of doing it right now, we need to cover one more section first before we do a big old worksheet. So notes open, 7.7. We're going to go over homework questions in just a second. I think we'll go over homework questions on 3 through 12 because most of you were able to get that one done. And for those of you that weren't able to do the second homework, try to catch up tonight.
Oh. Oh my god. Okay, god, that's that. I need to tell you.
Does anybody else have that 7.5 bonus worksheet? I gave some of you an extra day because you were absent. I think Levi, you brought it up. Does anybody else have that bonus worksheet that you were absent for when we turned it in and maybe you have it done? You peek in your notebook or peek in your file. Last call for that one.
Oh, that one?
It was the bonus worksheet. You were absent when we turned it in.
Yeah.
Oh, she yawned.
Okay.
Is that what you call a joke teaser?
So we all have this written down because you've had more than enough time. Section 7.7. We are going to finish our coverage of basic factors. Now there is a 7.8 before the next test. The next test isn't until next Friday, I think. There is another section that we need to do. We're going to have a couple days on this one. But for the homework quiz this Friday, it's going to be on the homeworks that we just did, which is 7.6, 3 through 24, basically, 3 through 12, 13 through 24, and 7.7. So I want us to get into notes today, 7.7, so that we can do that book work tonight. Then we're going to have a secondary book work tomorrow night, the homework quiz on Friday with a worksheet over the weekend. That's kind of the plan. And the worksheet's going to be on all the basic factoring stuff. So, what is different? Before we go back and cover the homework questions, I know a few of you are like, oh, I got one wrong, I'm not sure why. A couple of you guys got stuck around 23, 24, for those of you that did those homework assignments. Before we go back to that work, you guys see the word factor, right?
Yeah.
But what's different about these guys?
There's only 2.
Yeah, which all the ones we've been doing, there have been 3, right? Can I show you what the third one is, even though I actually don't want you to write it every single time, but at least for these first couple, can I show you why there's no third? There actually is, but it was a 0. What's 0 times n? So it went away. There was a third. There were 3. It was x squared plus 0x minus 25. So in all reality, hi. There were 3, but one of them was 0. Yeah? And this one too. There were 3. 4z squared plus 0z. There were 3. Just the middle one was 0. And the middle one is always going to be 0, aka we're always only going to see 2 when... we'll get back to that in just 1 second. Okay, here we go. These are the ones you guys are just looking at, you were just grading. Were there any of the evens, remember the odds you're supposed to check last night, but any evens or odds you got stuck on? Any ones that you guys want me to do as a quick example? Andrew.
Number 22.
Number 22. Anything else besides 22? Okay, pause. A lot of you got stuck on 22. I saw a lot of homeworks that went to 24 and they got stuck right around 22, 23, 24. So if you guys don't have your homework still out, I told you to keep it out so we could go over homework questions. You guys can't do 2 things at once. But if you did do 13 through 24, let's check your 22 together because I saw lots of people get stuck there. And if you didn't do the second homework, can you just write it in the back of your homework spiral? You'll have it ready for tonight when you're trying to finish your homework. It's a tricky one, okay? So number 22. Thanks, Andrew. That was a great question. Gives us the following trinomial. So we still have that normal, okay, there are 3 of them. It's not like today where there are only 2. But What's that leading number? Oh, that leading sign.
Negative.
So we just saw today, always pull that negative out first. You guys, are you good enough at being able to pull out a negative? You can tell me what's left when we pull out a negative?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. What's the first one to come?
22.
Positive 22b squared. What's the next one to come?
29b.
But with a minus though, right? A positive over a negative. And what's that last one to come?
Plus 9.
Because a negative over a negative is a positive. Just look at it. Why did a lot of people get stuck here? What's the next thing that you should be thinking? Yeah, A times C, 9 times 22. Now, there were a couple kids in here doing math yesterday, guys. Even the calculus kids, sometimes if they're not allowed to use their calculator, or even if sometimes faster, you can go off to the side and say, what is that? Do a quick little 2-column multiplication. 9 times 2 is 18, carry the 1. 18 plus 1, 19. Some of you wouldn't have even gotten your phone out that fast. 198. Is a bit scary though. Now we can look at this and say, hey, same sign or opposite signs? I need a positive. I need a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative, right? Same sign. Same sign, and what same sign are they going to have? They're both going to be negatives. So right away, I know, okay, I'm looking for two negative numbers that add to be 29 and multiply to be 198. Now the struggle is, isn't 198 pretty stinking big? Yikes. Don't be overwhelmed. You guys see me do this in class enough. Sean, 198 divided by 1? 198, right? It's an even number. Doesn't 2 go in?
Yeah.
Some of you could grab out a calculator at this point and be like, 198 divided by 2 is, and you should have found 99, I think. 99. 3, I don't know, has 9s in it, maybe? Oh, I see the 99. 3 has to go in. Okay, so 3 has to go in, and it'd be, I think, 66 times. 4. 4 goes in, not at all. 5, nope, doesn't end in a 0 or 5. 6, nope. You can try. Oh, no, it does. You're right. You're right. Because 6 goes into 66, right? So 6 is going to go in 33 times. Oh, this is weird. 7? I don't think so. 8? No, because 4 doesn't go in. 9? 9 goes in. 9 goes into 99. And if you guys are curious, I'm not like doing magical math up here. I'm literally doing little baby divisions and saying, does 9 go into 19? And saying, yes, 2 times. That's 18. And I'm saying, oh, hey, 9 goes into 18. Perfect. It's going to work. That's what I'm doing in my head. I think 11 goes into, 11 is going to go in 18 times. Okay. We can keep on looking, but no other numbers are going to go in. Or you'll start hitting like 22 and 33, and we already have those. Okay. Any of those look like they'll help us if we're adding them together. They're the same sign. We're adding them together to make 29. Way too big, way too big, way too big, way too big. Too big? Troy, what's that then? Do you have a question? I bet you have a question. So we have 11 and we have 18. So the numbers were big. That's why a lot of people got scared. Andrew, good so far? Just took us a while to find that 11 and that 18. So that at this point, now hold on. I see a few of you guys not using the box, or you started using the box when it got harder. Can I go ahead and just do it your way? Because anybody not using the box, I want to make sure you're doing it right, okay? So if you're not doing the box, you would have said this guy came from negative 11D and negative 18D.
11D.
Right here, 11. And then 18. They both need to go with the variable, and the variable is D. And we have 22D squared. Don't forget your negative in front. Like people that are doing this without a box, you're doing the exact same thing we're doing, just a different way. It's okay. You got it. Now, my people, once again, not using the box, you still have to ask yourselves what's the GCF or what's in common, but you're asking yourselves 2 at a time, kind of like we do. Guys, about half the class wasn't using the box for at least half their homework. I just need to make sure they're doing it right. Okay, please reconsider. Jeremy, I know, just kind of
Yeah.
close it and we can organize it later, okay? Do you guys see that there's an 11D that's in common here?
D.
There's an 11, there's a D, I can pull out 11 and the D. I would end up with 2D minus 1. If I was to take out what was in common. This is ultimately what the boxes are doing, it's just a little bit different of a way of showing it. Now you have to take out a 2, oh no, a 9. A 9 goes into both, but I would need to pull out that negative also. And I would end up with 2D minus 1. Some of you might not remember to keep this guy, he has to stay along for the ride the whole time. And then you can ask yourself, hey, don't they both have this 2D minus 1 thing? Now, there is no pressure for you to do this without a box. I'm just showing the people that are doing it without a box what the work should look like. That way they're not just kind of making up their own way. A lot of people that have learned factoring, especially who have taken like Algebra 2, they might do it a different way than the box. We're just in Algebra 1. The box makes it a little bit easier in my head. So the box would have gotten us to the exact same place if we had put in our 22D squared and our 9, our first and our last. We would have thrown in these two, negative 11D and negative 18D, and asked ourselves, what is in common? A negative 9. Remember, the negative always comes out at the very end. Nothing. Oh, a negative. Negative 1. I think a 2 and a D comes out, and then an 11. Okay, guys, do they both work? I think so, as long as you remember to keep that little negative around the entire time. Andrew Box, it's a great question. It's a really tricky one because that A times C was really big. But even if it's really big, just divide by 1, divide by 2. Keep on dividing and writing down whatever pairs you find, okay? All right. What on earth do we do if there's a 0 in the middle? We're not even going to see it. It's not going to be there. Our brain's going to be like, what? There are only 2 of them. But that's actually a huge blessing. Because if our brain didn't do like a little like, what? Then we wouldn't know that things have changed a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the fact that you see 2, that's good. Your brain's going to be like, hold on, something's new, and something is. Whenever there are only 2, the middle was 0, what does that mean? Well, you guys remember in multiplying that there was a shortcut, squared minus squared, whenever we had a difference of squares? Squared minus squared was what always happened whenever we had 2 of the exact same factor with different signs, 1 plus, 1 minus. Now I'm going to zoom in on the examples and show you the 0, but the 0 is actually kind of nice because if you were to start doing this one, and if you were to start doing your box, you would say, okay, A times C, that's still there, it's negative 25. But what would your middle term be if it's not there?
0.
You could throw in a 0. And say, wait a minute, what factors of 25 would make 0? Isn't 25 5 times 5? And don't I just need one of those to be a negative? Ultimately, for all of these, where there's a 0, I must have some sort of perfect square that's just going to cancel each other out. So if I was to go to my box, and if I was to use my method, I would have my x squared, my negative 25. I would have a 5x and a negative 5x, and what's always going to happen is when you pull out what's in common, one of them is going to be a positive square root, and the other one's going to be a negative square root. It's going to be that difference of squares that we saw on the last test multiplied to b squared minus squared. So, do you think there's a shortcut in here somewhere? Definitely. Whenever you see your squared minus squared, whenever you see your squared minus squared, we can actually come backwards and say square root plus square root and square root minus square root. Now this gets a little bit tricky unless you remember our formula. So let me come back to the A's and the B's and show you what we got. How do you get a from a squared?
Got it.
How do you get 5 from 25?
Divide.
Kind of. Not quite dividing though. I mean, it kind of is. Like 25 divided by 5 is 5. We need it to match up. If I was to do another screen real quick. Okay. And if I was to say something like 36 is a squared, what is a?
Okay.
How do you know 6? Did you divide? Maybe, but you probably did something else in that. What gets rid of a squared? A square root. It's something we don't use tons and tons, or at least we haven't used tons and tons with me this year. To go backwards, we actually have to square root. To go backwards, we actually have to square root. Now guys, that's this example. So if we need to go backwards from 36, we have to think about the square root, which would be 6. What if you had to go backwards from 4x squared? Ooh. Can you go backwards from that one? What times what makes 4x squared? 2.
2x.
2x. Because if you have to square root, in algebra, there's this thing called inverse operations. The inverse of addition is subtraction. If you have like a plus in an equation, you need to minus it to move it over. The inverse of multiplication is division. If you have a multiplying equation, you have to divide to move it over. The inverse of squaring is square rooting. Getting rid of a squared is putting in a squared root. Square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 4x squared, square root of 4 is a 2. And what's the square root of an x squared? Just an x. Now we're going to use those ideas when we try to factor. Okay? Because this one, what's the square root of x squared? Just x. See him? What's the square root of 25? See him? So in order to be able to go from a squared minus squared, kind of the shortcut way, the box will work. The box will work as long as you make sure 0 is the middle because he's not there. But if you want to go a little bit quicker or use the shortcut backwards, whenever you see a squared minus squared, you're going to go ahead and need to think of a square root of squared plus and minus a square root of squared. Now it's a little bit nasty until you start practicing it. So let's go ahead and zoom in just a little bit. We have this little formula, a squared minus b squared is a plus b, a minus b. Squared minus squared, a squared minus b squared is, take his square root, x plus his square root, 5, and x minus 5. Can we jump to this one and what he would be? What's the square root of 4z squared? 2 or 4? 2z plus. So right away I can get my 2z plus, my 2z minus. I know it's going to fit the pattern. I have to ask myself, what's the square root of this guy? Oh, really? Now pause. How can you double check? How can you double check any factoring? Yeah, do the opposite. So instead of factoring it out, multiply it together. So if we were to multiply it together, this would be x squared minus 5x plus 5x minus 25 if you're a non-box person. And what's going to happen to this guy and this guy?
Cancel.
Exactly. If you've done it right, you should get your squared minus squared just like you had a second ago. And same thing here. If you multiply 2z times 2z, outer with our foiling, inner with our foiling, last. What's going to happen to this guy? 0. If I've done it right. So you guys, whenever you see 2 terms with a minus in between, a squared minus squared, it was a shortcut of a plus b times a minus b. We have to go backwards by a square root of the first and of the second. Can you get all of these done in the next 5 minutes. I'm going to show the answers in 4 minutes. You don't even need to use a box if you can get the pattern. You don't even need to use a box if you can get the pattern. All of these are a squared minus b squared. Whenever you have a squared minus b squared, you ask yourself, what's the square root of the first plus square root of the second? And square root of the first minus square root. If you want to do the x method, you can. The middle term is 0.
Oh, it's okay. You'll mess up first.
Yeah. We're just trying. Not that those are for. Even when homework is for. Trial and error.
That's funny.
I'm going to slowly start putting answers up on the board, but not to all of them. I'll just do the first one. You guys can check in a second. I'm going to answer a question as soon as I put the first one so that for people to check.
Oh, I got it.
So you can get off the one.
I didn't do it.
But does it make sense now?
Makes sense. Maybe 6. Oh, yeah.
But remember when we get Did they figure out what times what is 100? Square root of 100 is?
10.
10 times 10 is 100, right?
See. Yeah.
You guys find the square roots of 100 and of m squared?
Oh, 10 of 10. Oh, yeah.
Nars.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 225 days.
So if you get up to 77, you'll be on track already.
Oh, now you're talking crap.
Are we square root now? Are we like the shortcuts? Look at this. No x, no box.
Yeah.
What's the square root of 9n squared? Square root of 9 is 3, and square root of n squared is plus square root of 16? 4. But if you have a plus, you also need a minus for our pattern. We're trying to square root. Oh, come on. We can square root the last one, can't we? Levi, what'd you get for the last one? You know what might really help for these is reviewing all of your squares. 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16. That way when you go backwards, it'll be a little bit faster. Alright guys, tonight's homework, just 2 through 14. Can you factor squared minus squared with a box or with a shortcut? Bye guys. Yeah, hopefully it'll be a lot easier after last night's homework. The homework's on the sideboard if you need it.
Wait.